So I want you to cast your mind back as I take you down memory lane to early 2025. We're in the Oval Office of the White House in DC, where Donald Trump and JD Vance are meeting Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. And yet, what was supposed to be a constructive first-time meeting is turning into one of the biggest diplomatic disasters caught live on air in recent memory, and ending with a rupture so significant it ends of US aid to Ukraine. All the while, Putin's war of conquest continues. And yet, despite all that, something happened this week in Washington that would have been unthinkable those 18 months prior. Donald Trump, this man who's told Zelensky at that time he had no cards, had cut off that aid and spent years seeing Putin as the favourable individual, sat in that same Oval Office and called Zelensky a friend. Coupled with that, the numerous revelations of MAGA influencers coming to realise that they have been spewing Kremlin talking points for so long, or Laura Loomer speaking to Zelensky in Kiev. All of this signals a massive shift. But I also want to be very clear about what it is and what it isn't. Indeed, this isn't a moral awakening. What Trump has is an instinct, the most finely tuned instinct of, you could say, American politics, for identifying who is winning and associating himself with them before anyone notices he's switched sides. Or, put it another way, Spain just won the World Cup, and yet still right there on the podium, trying to celebrate as though he'd done half the effort as well, was Donald Trump, to the extent that he had to be artificially removed from any and all photos. In this case, though, Ukraine is winning, and Trump has just shown up in Spanish kit. All that being said, what's transpired in the past 24 hours in the White House seemingly bodes well for the future of Ukraine and its war against Putin. Let's get into it.
This is The Global Gambit.
How you going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, where I wanted to take a quick stock of what we've seen in the past 24 hours. Zelensky's short but seemingly sweet and productive conversation meeting with Trump. Certainly nothing of the nature that we saw the year before, and, well, JD Vance nowhere to be seen. And his then engagements with Netanyahu and his attendance of Lindsey Graham's funeral. Quite a lot here to unpack, which I think is more than you might have thought. And of course, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this latest development. Still, before we get to Trump, let's establish something being almost entirely overlooked in the coverage of this week's White House meeting. Ukraine is winning. Not because of American support, of course, despite its absence. Since early 25, the US has provided Ukraine, as we know, with no direct financial assistance. A big fat zero. The weapons Ukraine has been receiving are all funded by Europe, and yet Ukraine has struck Moscow refineries, burned their wildberry warehouses, hit Iranian tankers in the Caspian Sea, mind you. A video on that you can find in the description. And they are, of course, developing drone technology so advanced that America has now turned to Ukraine to help in intercepting Iran's Shahed drones in the Gulf. The country that Trump's America abandoned is now helping his America fight the war that he decided to fight in the Middle East. That is the context in which this week's White House is happening, and it matters enormously for understanding what Zelensky walked in with. Essentially, Ukraine struck wildberries again numerous times in the past couple of weeks. A warehouse of Ryazan was evacuated, 6 injured, fires at various industrial plants. But here is the detail that I think tells you how damage the original strikes did is even more than that. The Russian government is now considering propping up wildberries with state funds. State-controlled bank VTB expected to play a key role here, and Bank developing loan restructuring for vendors amid fears that Ukraine's continued attacks will trigger a wave of bankruptcies among small businesses that depend on the platform. Russia's largest online retailer, think of it as Amazon of America, they process 4 million orders a day. Now that's going to require a state bailout. So this isn't an economic story as much as it is a war reaching ordinary Russians in the place that the Kremlin spent 4 years telling them that it never would kind of story. Now I also want to consider Laura Loomer, only for a moment, that's as much as I can manage, because she also is revealing anything more than Trump has said in the Oval Office. She's not exactly moderate, She's one of the most committed members of Trump's inner circle, a true believer who's spent years amplifying him and, of course, Russian talking points and opposing Ukraine in any way, shape, or form. But she flew 35 hours in the past week from Florida to Kiev. She went to bomb shelters during air raids. She interviewed Zelensky. She drove from Kharkiv to Kiev, past military checkpoints, stopped to film a bombed-out gas station, and then she called Tucker Carlson, the man who also flew, but to Moscow to film a grocery store, and told American Russians that they live better than them, that he's the woke right. She said he swallowed Russian propaganda and was undermining American national security. So, from a Trump loyalist about Tucker Carlson. Trump even shared Laura Loomer's interview with Zelensky on his social media platform Truth Social and said, and I want to quote this directly because the contrast with 18 months ago is pretty extraordinary, very good. Not that he's a man of many words, but the point is, just how different is this? The man who told Zelensky he had no cars is sharing fan content about him on social media. The propaganda infrastructure that sustained this right-wing support for Russia and Putin is being dismantled from the inside, not by liberals or those who opposed it, but the people who built it. And this is what I also want to say directly. Trump is not switching sides here, or at least because he developed some kind of conscience or massive care for Ukraine. He is not moved enough by Ukraine's suffering or Putin's war crimes, or the children kidnapped or the cities destroyed. He has no moral compass. He associates himself with winners and distances himself from losers. He was never necessarily pro-Russian. He was never pro-Ukraine. He was whoever appears to be winning and looks better for him. Say it once, and then let the evidence do the work. Russia appeared to be winning at the turn of the year. Trump leaned towards Moscow. There was a lot of pressure on Ukraine in the fall. Ukraine has been winning, though, for much of 26, and Trump is therefore pivoting back to Kiev. That is the complete explanation. Nothing else really is required. But this video has more to say, because this is the reframe that I think actually matters, and it's one that should give Ukraine supporters some genuine, if uncomfortable, solace. Trump's narcissism, his superficiality, his complete absence of principle, in this specific case, is working in Ukraine's favor, at least this time. Because, again, Ukraine is winning. And Trump's instinct to back winners means that the political space in America for abandoning Ukraine is closing. Not because of that moral clarity, but because of Donald Trump's most fundamental character flaw accidentally pointing it in the right direction for once. The Patriot manufacturing license, the Senate sanctions legislation moving forward, Laura Loomer's calls on Tucker Carlson and threats to American national security. These are real consequences, even if the motivation behind them is entirely perverse or cynical even. Ukraine didn't need Trump to believe in it. It needed to win enough that Trump's instinct would take over. It did. He did. And he will claim credit for all of it, of course. But that doesn't necessarily overwhelm the fact of what's happening on the battlefield and where it matters most. And there is one other dimension worth adding. The convergence of the Iranian and Ukrainian wars is doing something that years of Ukrainian diplomacy could not, making support for Ukraine a matter of direct American national security interest. Russia is providing that satellite targeting data for Iranian strikes on American soldiers. Ukraine struck this ship just a couple of days ago, carrying critical military cargo between them. Ukraine's drone operators are in the Gulf, helping intercept Iranian Shahed drones that Russia has upgraded and supplied back to them. The wars are connected here, and Trump is beginning to see that connection. Zelensky walked into the White House this week, not as a supplicant. He walked in as an ally with receipts, a genuine power broker here. A tanker sunk, satellite intelligence proving Russian coordination with Iran is even worse than Trump ever thought. Drone technology that America is borrowing and having signed an agreement for. A war being won without much American input at all. That is a different conversation than early 2025. And Ukraine is making it happen alongside the support of the Europeans. All of this signals a huge shift in the balance of power to me. And while I'm not going to get ahead of myself, as I said at the beginning, I think it's worth taking stock of just how different a few months, a year can make, and what it bodes for the future if we can continue on this trajectory. No one's pretending to have the answers here, but it is, again, unfortunately, that Trump's most unpleasant quality, at least in this case, is actually going to benefit Ukraine, and therefore that's what matters most in the longer run. Sometimes the right things happen for entirely the wrong reasons, and I think this is one of those times. Well, that's it from me, everyone. If you enjoyed this, then of course do give it a like. It's free, but really helps the channel. And do subscribe if you want to see more updates from me, more quick takes, and deeper conversations, interviews with people like Sarah Payne, who's coming back, David Petraeus. We've got a conversation with Paul Wahlberg, and Konstantin Samalyev will be sharing his story from what he experienced in hospital in the next few days. We'll see you soon. Take care.